Part three, finishing up this series of the two witnesses. We're going to close out, and this is going to be a smaller video than the last previous two. And we're going to get to where we closed out in the last part two, rather. We closed out with Elijah, and we were talking about how both of them had not tasted death. Now, it tells you here that it came to pass, and this is how Elijah was taken up and caught up. It shows you where Enoch was caught up. And this one was with Elijah and Elisha. This was his protege. And that story is a fascinating story as well. Well, anyway, it says, it came to pass when Yahweh would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elijah from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, tarry thee here, and I pray thee, for the Elohim hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as Yahweh liveth, as my soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So he went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha, and said unto him, knowest that the Elohim will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yeah, I know it. Hold your peace. And he didn't want to hear it because him and Elijah had become so close. And anyway, he kept going and he prayed there, and he says, and the prophets took him there, and he said, knowest that he would take your master from you today? So they kept telling him and reminding him. And 50 sons of men of the prophets went and stood afar off, and they stood, and they too stood by Jordan. That's Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and smote the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that the two went over on dry ground. And it came to pass, see, he was parting waters, Elijah, too. Ain't that something? And when they were going over, Elijah said to Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon thee. And he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass, as they went still on and talked, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more. And he took hold of his own clothes, and he rent them in two pieces. And he also took the mantle of Elijah that fell on him. Wow. So when he took him up, his clothes fell on him. And he went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell on him and smote the waters, and said, where is the Yahweh Elohim of Elijah? And when he had smitten the waters, they parted here and there, and Elijah went over. So he had the power that Elijah had, for the gifts. So Elijah succeeds him, and then he starts going judging Israel. And as you notice that they started killing all of the prophets after that. Elijah was the first one and the only one who the Most High endowed with all of the gifts and the powers that he gave Elijah and Enoch. Those two are the only ones. And there's just no other way that you can, he tells you now, these are the two witnesses. They're the two olive trees. I've made my case. And I'll show you another one. I'll show you another one from Esdras too. This is another part of the narrative. Now let's go to 4th Esdras. If I can find it. Here, let me line them up a different way. Oops. Made them smaller. Let me go larger then. All right, so that's second Esdras. I need fourth Esdras. Uh, I don't know. No, it's in here somewhere. Hold on, let me get it. Let me get it. All right, let me follow another way. Fourth Esdras. There we go. All right, now. Now, this is where we're going to find out. We're going to find out where they mention them, not by name, but by these two characteristics. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Fourth Esdras is so deep. Now here we're getting into it. Where the last one I dealt with you with the dragons of Arabia. Okay, well, let me go. Paste it. Okay, here we go. Now, now he said to me, at the beginning of the earth, before the portals of the world were in place, and before the cymbal winds blew, and before the rumblings of the thunder sound, and before the flashes of lightning shone, and before the foundations of paradise were laid, and before the beautiful flowers were seen, and before the powers of the movement were established, and before the innumerable hosts of heavens were gathered together, and before the heights of the air were lifted up, and before the measures of the firmaments were named, and before the footstool of Zion was established, and before the present years were reckoned, and before the imagination of those who are now sinned, who now sin were estranged, and before those who stored up the treasures of faith were sealed, then I planned these things. And they were made through me and not through another. Let me make that a little bigger. They were made through me and not through another. And I answered and said, what will be the dividing of the times? Or when will be the end of the first stage and the beginning of the age that follows? And he said to me, from Abraham to Isaac, because from him were born Jacob and Esau. For Jacob's hand held Esau's heel from the beginning. For Esau is the end of this age, and Jacob is the beginning of the age that follows. That's the age we're embarking on right now. For the beginning of a man is his hand, and the end of a man is his heel. Between the head, the heel, and the hand, seek for nothing else. Ezra. And he said, and I answered and said, O sovereign Yahweh, if I have found favor in thy sight, show thy servant the end of thy signs, which thou didst show me in part on a previous night. And he answered and said to me, rise to your feet, and you will hear a full resounding voice. And if the place where you are standing is greatly shaken, whilst the voice is speaking, do not be terrified, because the word concerns the end, and the foundations of the earth will understand that the speech concerns them, and they will tremble and be shaken, for they know that their end must be changed. And when I heard this, I rose to my feet and listened, and behold, a voice was speaking, and it sounded like the sound of many waters. And it said, behold, the days are coming, and it shall be that when I draw near to visit the inhabitants of the earth. He's saying that, behold, the days are coming, and it shall be that when I draw near to visit the inhabitants of the earth, and when I require from the doors of iniquity the penalty of their iniquity, And when the humiliation of Zion is complete, that's what we're going through right now, our complete humiliation. And when the seal is placed upon the age which is about to pass away, then I will show these signs. He said, the book shall be opened before the firmament, and it shall see, and all shall see it together. Infants a year old shall speak with their voices, and women with child shall give birth to the premature children at 3 and 4 months. This is what we can expect. And these shall live and dance. Sown places shall suddenly appear unsown. See that? Places that were barren and like deserts will be unsown. You know what I mean? It will be reversed, and reverse places will be full. And full storehouses shall be suddenly found empty. No, he don't say to replenish. He's saying that everybody's getting famished. Let me rephrase that. This doesn't go back to both ways. I got ahead of myself. He says, infants a year old shall speak with their voices and all of that, and sown places shall suddenly appear unsown, and full storehouses shall be suddenly found to be empty. So the Most High said that I'm going to famish the gods of the earth. So that's what that is. Let's be clear. He's judging the earth and all their wealth. And the trumpet shall sound aloud, and when they all hear it, they shall suddenly be terrified. And at that time, friends shall make war on friends like enemies. And the earth and those who inhabit it shall be terrified. And the springs of the fountain shall stand, so that for 3 hours they shall not flow. And it shall be that whoever remains after all that I have foretold you shall himself be saved, and shall see my salvation at the end of my world. And they shall see the men who were taken up. And they shall see the men who were taken up, who from their birth have not tasted death. And notice it says men. These are 2 men, Enoch and Elijah. And they both were taken up. And from birth, both of them had not tasted death. And the heart of the earth's inhabitants shall be changed and converted to a different spirit. That's when the Most High said he's going to put his spirit within your spirit and cause you to walk in his statutes. So this is it, folks. This is it, folks. This is the end. And this is what we can look forward to. And to read that, he says, now, after they killed them, you got to remember the story goes that at the end of their 3.5-year testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall overcome them and kill them, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city. Remember I told you the Romans and all of the descendants of England and descendants of Israel, we are all considered the last 4th dreadful beast. And the scriptures say they ascended out of the bottomless pit. That same beast having 7 heads and 10 horns, that is the beast that is going to kill them. The authority of them. And we read about that in Enoch when they all gathered together and they're going to shoot them. And he says, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. So they're saying that they're going to kill them and let their bodies lie in the street for 3.5 days. And they said, and after 3.5 days, the spirit of life and the spirit of life from Yah entered into them, and they stood on their feet. And great fear fell upon them which saw them. And I heard a great voice from heaven saying, come up here. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 part of the city fell. That would be Jerusalem. Remember that? Remember that they would be killed in the city. where Messiah was crucified. And he said, and the 10th part of the city fell, and the earthquake were slain, the men of 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and they gave glory to the Elohim of heaven. And it says, the first woe was past, and behold, the third will come quickly. So he's saying that all of these trumpets that you hear, and these woes, what you read after that begins after this. It says, and the 7 angels sounded, and the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdom of our Elohim. So he's saying once they rise to their feet and are taken up, it's over. And it tells you the nations were angry, and thy wrath has come, the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that they should give thy reward unto the servants thy prophets, and to the saints, and to them that fear thy name, small and great, and should destroy them which destroy the earth. This is the reward. This is the great substance. And the temple of Yahweh was opened in heaven, and they were seen in his temple the ark of his covenant, or the ark of his testament. That's the ark of the covenant. That's why it ain't here either. And there were voices, and there were lightnings and voices, and thunderings and earthquake and a great hail. And I'll restore that, because the book of Baruch tells you that it was the ark of the covenant and the holy of holies and the mercy seat that was taken. This says the ark of his testament. This, I believe, was the model Moses was shown to model the temple after, or model the holy of holies after. All right, so that here is the end of this here study. And it's a lot of information, I know, but I'm telling you, this is the end of it. And if you want to get into a little bit more detail of it, I went into, I'll go back into Enoch and the story. And I use a little bit of the story here to show you just how long Most High has been dealing with this, as far as me, and revealing this to me. It's a big study. I encourage y'all to get on there and read this. This is Ramaphosa, King of South Africa, or President of South Africa. That's King Salman of Saudi Arabia. Very deep story, those cats. Anyway, let's keep going. I'm going to get to Enoch and my man Nipsey Hussle. Woe to the rich. This is a very thing about Moses marrying an Ethiopian woman. Very deep passage. Okay, let me find this. This should be coming up. I've been post for years on this. So this is not new to me. It's new to me in the videos, but not new to me in the print. And here we go. And just to give you an idea of it, he says, let's start a little bit. I'll read it again. See if I can come up a little bit. It says, Shalom, as promised, we're going to explore the two witnesses as with purpose, explain their integral part of this in this mystery of Jacob's redemption. It says, I watch current debates and disputes with our people, mostly faithless arguments, mind you, and wonder, where's our revelation? Why are we distracted and detached from the most important of Yah's messages for us in these last days? The information we will need in these last days. It's sad, quite frankly, because I know it's time. It's the same problem we've always struggled with, faith. We simply don't believe. Therefore, we receive no revelations. The Most High in his Ruach HaKodesh, his Holy Spirit, will never give precious secrets and revelations to those who don't believe. Don't throw your pearls before swine, being that they trample upon it. To paraphrase Messiah about sharing revelations. So this is where this comes from. See, your faith is like a doorbell. It's what opens the door to you. It's what causes the teacher to let you in and sup with you. I know that people will say, well, I know we are Hebrews, or I believe we are the Most High's people, But these same folks don't believe his promises, though, which to the Messiah is the same as not believing at all. This is what separates the Hebrew from the elect, faith. But without faith it's impossible to please him. For he that hath cometh to Yah must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. See that? You got to be looking for this thing. You got to be looking and seeking to find his face and his ways. He said, this is why we see so many people holding this truth out there and teaching it, but are not mixing it with faith, arguing the same old basic precepts and ending up going backwards, like we see with so many of our supposed internet shepherds, void of revelation, whose premise is based on doubt and unbelief. Faith is knowing that this 400-year captivity is applied to this generation. Faith is knowing that we will return to our land rich and in glory, with scorn and contempt for our people gone. Faith is knowing that we are going to get justice from every nation that has afflicted us. See? Anything else is just conversation, spinning your wheels. Here's the thing, though. No one can teach you faith. You either believe or you don't. But you can develop it. Like the Christians say, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Yah. Ironic, too, because this is the very thing none of them have time for, reading. Oh, that's deep. So let's get into our study, now that I've gotten that out the way. So I'll get into a little bit of the foundation. So I wanted to get into something about this because I didn't get into that in the earlier part of this message, where the two witnesses show up again. And it says, anyway, before we get into this dynamic study, we have to first, because of these faceless teachers are failing to make the distinction, two separate end-time events. The first is the gathering, which Yahweh will collect all of the descendants of the African slaves from the effects of the slave trade from the four corners of the earth. This is North America, Russia, Iceland, to South America and China on the bottom corners. Africa and the Middle East are separate gatherings. Those are from the Assyrian captivity, the lost sheep, the one the Messiah and the 12 disciples were teaching to. Those were in Asia. And it says this second event is the coming of Messiah. See, there's a gathering and there's the coming of Messiah, which we know from Acts is the return from which Messiah left, Mount Olive or Mount Olivet. And it says, when he, Yahshua, was spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received them out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly, behold, toward heaven, as he looked up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel. I believe this is Enoch and Elijah right here. And said, ye men of Galilee, why standing ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahushua which is taken up from you into heaven shall so come or return in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven. And they returned unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olive, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey. And that's out there in the West Bank and over there where all of the conflict is going on in the occupied territory, and a territory that was previously rendered sort of like a buffer zone to keep the Palestinians and the Jews separate, but they violate that. And I said, you see that? Messiah is to return the same way he left, on Mount Olive. I said, but these two men you have you believe that these are the same event? And as you can see, they are not. Now, there was a lot of revelation in that passage, particularly the two men standing by the Messiah in the two white robes, or in the white robes reference. We know from the book of Revelation that white robes or white apparel represents the redeemed. And as of now, no one is redeemed. So apparently these two men, it says, were standing next to the Messiah in these white robes. And it says in Revelations, in great multitude which no man could number. This is after we are all gathered and redeemed. And it says, people of all nations, kindreds, tongues, and peoples. And I believe that these are all us gathered out of all nations and kindreds and people. Black people from all of these, the African communities, or Afro-American or Afro communities in these. They got an Afro-Brazilian community, an Afro-Australian community, got Afro everyone. So So anyway, these are all gathered in. He said, he cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our Yah, which is sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. All right? And it tells you all of these, they were saying their message, they were blessing in, the throne, and they fell upon the throne upon their faces and worshiped God. And one of the elders saying to me, what are these which are arrayed in white robes? And from where are they coming from? Or whence came they? And I said unto them, sir, thou knowest. And said unto me, these are they which came out of great tribulation. Not no 7-year tribulation. It's the tribulation all the way since the times of the Gentiles began, which we started in part 1. 2300 BC, when Alexander the Great took over. And have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. See it? Then I get into this, which we already covered in this one, the 2 anointed ones, and they shall stand by the Elohim of the whole earth. So I'm going to move on because we're going to go into some more heavier subjects. But this one I felt was more important and timely because as we embark on this world conflict that's coming up with Iran and Israel, all of the governors or the rulers in every country of the heads of this beast, meaning America, Israel, and England, are both, in terms of their leaders, are both indictments and their rulership and authority in jeopardy, to where some may end up in jail or whatnot, which I doubt. I believe the Most High is just snatching their authority before the judgment calls. He always breaks you down before he destroys you. So this is what we're facing now. And these men will stand up and as our leaders, and they will lead us out of this Yah forsaken town. And I go into the whole thing. Everything. He's the voice of him crying in the wilderness. I didn't get into that as well. That was the way they identified him, as the voice crying in the wilderness. And I get into Enoch, the man clothed with linens with the writer's inkhorn. We saw that before. So this here is a very detailed study that it may not have been as pretty as I would like. But like I said, this is pretty much what I forte, for lack of a better word. And this is what I've been skilled to do, is to write and to use the scriptures in writing. But the videos, they'll come along as I begin to do them, Yah willing, at the time that we have left. But in the meantime, read this, and I hope that it will enrich you and expand your understanding and your knowledge of the Most High and His Word. And shalom, and I'll see you next time.